Folks, yesterday we got the sad news out of South Africa that Archbishop Desmond Tutu passed away at the age of 90 years old. He was one of the fiercest voices speaking out against apartheid over the last several decades. When you think about central figures of the 20th century, 21st century, you think of Nelson Mandela, but you also think of Winnie Mandela. And indeed, Desmond Tutu won the Nobel Peace Prize. He was a small man who loved to laugh, but he was fierce when it came to preaching. And he was one of those voices again who spoke out against apartheid and who was known all around the world for being a fierce speaker. But he didn't just speak out against apartheid. After the African National Congress took over the country, he was just as critical of them for their management of the country. And he was very vocal against several ANC leaders, saying that their leadership was even worse than the apartheid regime because they were black. He was someone again who preached the word of God. The Anglican Church, they've been honoring him as well. There's going to be a week of mourning in South Africa as a result of his passing. Tributes have been pouring in since the news broke yesterday of his passing as well. Folks have been visiting his home, visiting with his family. The president of the country has done so as well. And again, he was, quite the voice. Even though he was up in age, he also appealed to young folks as well. This is him speaking just a few years ago to the One Young World Conference. Here's just some of what Bishop Desmond Tutu had to say.
Here. Good evening. Oh, that's lousy. Hello. Well, despite all appearances to the contrary, I am old. A few years ago, they named a school after me in the Netherlands. That's not the important thing. The school was celebrating its 400th anniversary. And my wife and I went to this little village in Holland. And when we arrived, a little girl came up to me and said, "Were you here when the school started?" I thought I knew I was decrepit, but not quite that decrepit. Well, why have I come? I have come actually because it is a very great privilege for me. And the privilege is, I want to salute you, for you are a fantastic bunch of human beings. I mean, you have amongst you people who are already leaders. The youngest racing pilot. You have a young man who is going to be the youngest to walk to the Arctic North Pole. Gee, it's cold here. I don't know what it would be like there. And then you gave a warm clap for someone who survived the Haiti disaster. You have some people here who are already investment bankers. Fantastic. And I come to salute you. I come because young people are such a fantastic group of people. You dream dreams. You dream dreams of a world that is without war. You dream dreams and you say, let us make poverty history. And I get very upset with you media. I get very upset with you because you go around telling people what is only part of the truth. You say, just look at these young people who go off the rails. Of course, there are young people who do go off the rails. But it's amazing. It's amazing. You know, when I was growing up, the only drug they had around was marijuana. What about today? You young people are exposed to some of the most horrendous things. Cocaine, all of those rough stuff, man. Hey. And you are people who are exposed to some of the most awful, pressured advertising. They tell you, if you want to be cool, man, you got to buy this, you got to buy the other, you got to buy. And when I was growing up, we didn't have internet. And I'm told there are some extraordinary things you can see on the internet. Oi. I don't know. I haven't seen them. I have been told. And what happens? Young people like yourselves are exposed to all of these pressures. What ought to surprise us is not that some young people succumb and go off the rails. What should be surprising us, what should be making us say, yay, they really are fantastic, is that so many don't. What should be surprising us, what should they really are fantastic, is that so many. And I've visited a number of poor countries.
I'm going to go to Reverend Jeff Carr. Reverend Carr, he was a strong moral voice, desperately needed at a very difficult time in South Africa.
Working away hidden. Teaching schools in poor, remote villages.
Yeah, we got you, Reverend Carr.
Oh, we got me here. Okay. I think you summed it up very well, Roland. When I think about Bishop Desmond Tutu, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, I think about the experiences that I had with him indirectly, having not ever met the man physically, but observing him as a mentor from afar, coming out of high school at the height of the apartheid, the anti-apartheid movement, going and traveling when Nelson Mandela got out of jail to Atlanta to hear him speak at a massive stadium at Georgia Tech in my early 20s when I'd just gotten out of school, following the work of this Nobel laureate, listening to his words, adapting and adopting some of his humor, seeing him as very much a template or a model for what we all strive to do, hopefully when we're in touch with our divine purpose. I think Vine Deloria Jr., one of the great First Nations activists, summed it up pretty clearly when he talked about the difference between spirituality and religion. He said religion is for people who are afraid of going to hell. Spirituality is for people who've already been there. So when we talk about the transcendent energy in someone like a Desmond Tutu, we talk about the legacy that we pour libations to. We talk about the legacy of his joyfulness, the legacy of his intellect, the legacy of his ability to connect with so many people. And even as we talk about that, there are going to be some conversations that come up. They already emerged on something that Bishop Tutu himself said he pretty much didn't fool with, and that's the internet. So we have the voices on the internet reminding us of the clips from the Justice and Reconciliation Committee where he begged Winnie Mandela, Sister Winnie Mandela, to ask for forgiveness and to apologize. That didn't sit well with a lot of people. It still doesn't sit well with a lot of people. Some people would look at that and say, well, no, here's fault to point out. But I always notice that the largest detractors are the people who don't have anywhere close to the legacy of the people that they're criticizing. So I will say that the larger legacy of this giant, this elder who made it to the ripe age of 90, is that you've got to love beyond. You've got to commit to love, and you've got to put yourself in a place of non-neutrality. I'll close with this. When I'm teaching spirituality to my students and people in world religion classes, I always point out a great book by Dr. David Hawkins. It's called Power versus Force. And it talks about neutrality being a particularly high vibration because it keeps you in a space where you can make decisions from a good place. When you talk about neutrality in terms of injustice, that's a different thing altogether. And one great quote that I pulled that Bishop Tutu put into the world is this: if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. So I'm so thankful for the life and legacy of this strong brother and this leader, and may he continue to inspire us now that he has transitioned to the space of life after life to live and walk in our divine purposes as well.
He was indeed a significant voice. I want to bring in John Hope Bryant, founder of Operation Hope. John, of course, posted a number of images and thoughts and reflections about Bishop Tutu yesterday and today on his social media accounts. Your paths often crossed. John, you called him a supporter of your work, but also a protector there as well. Just share us your thoughts and reflections of this small but giant of a man.
Yeah, I'm actually, thanks for doing this, Roland. I'm actually sitting here trying to find my emails. For those who think that Archbishop Desmond Tutu, which he asked me to call him Arch, by the way. He asked his friends to call him Arch. I'm trying to find actually the emails from him that he sent me. I'm trying to give you an example of one where he sent me emails from his iPad. So for those who didn't think that he was part of maybe at a time when he did that interview, he was not on the internet, so to speak. But in 2018, 2019, he was emailing me from his iPad with pretty humorous stuff, by the way. He had a wonderful sense of humor. My relationship with him, I'm trying to find this while I'm talking to you, Roland. My relationship with him really changed over time. And let me first say that I met him reputationally. I think he trusted me because of my relationship with Ambassador Andrew Young. And before that, I knew Mandela just very modestly. But I think that's because he knew I was Ambassador Young's guy. He trusted me, and then we worked together on global dignity together with the Crown Prince of Norway and Pekka Himana of Finland. And there's a funny clip you should show later on where Desmond Tutu and I are dancing on stage in Finland there's a song, I can't remember the name of the song, but it's on Dignity. You can find it on YouTube. And when you first see it, he's very stiff. He has given his proper speech. He was the president of Finland. It was the Desmond Tutu, Archbishop Desmond Tutu that we all know, the freedom fighter, the spiritual leader. I don't know if I started dancing first or he started dancing first. We were the only two brothers on stage. But at some point, one of us started rocking. And then you'll see in the video, the other started rocking. I don't want to give myself credit for getting Desmond Tutu to relax, Arch. But it probably was him that started dancing because he's got that South African joy. And after a while, Roland, you'll see in this video, he's, he is in it. This was the two sides of Archbishop Desmond Tutu. This formal, intellectual, spiritual giant that was just talked about in very eloquent terms. And then this, over time, I got to know him more as a human being, as a person, who had an incredible sense of humor, who was really funny, who took life seriously, but never himself seriously. I've learned that lesson from him and Ambassador Young. Never take yourself too seriously. And then he talking about the work of Operation Hope and how that was, he thought, the next generation of what South Africa needed. this economic empowerment piece. And so he helped me open the door in South Africa. Really, I was trusted in South Africa because of him. And there's a lot of stuff on the internet about that. I won't take up time on that. But he was my credibility in South Africa. He opened doors, he gave us cover, and we helped tens of thousands of struggling women there to get self-reliance, because he thought that the journey was not over. The movement, and this was a decade or more ago, Roland. He thought the next movement was economics, that the color in South Africa was not black or white, it was the color of poverty or wealth, the lack thereof, and that would give people some measure of self-determination and freedom. So he was a multi-dimensional person, and he had, again, a ferocious sense of humor. I just found a text from him from April 2017. I don't know if you can see that, Roland. I mean, that's an iPad note, okay? And it might even say from my iPad.
Yeah, we actually see it. Thanks, dear young friend. I trust you and yours had a blessed and happy Easter. Yeah, we see it.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. So, and I don't know what else it says. I hope it's nothing private. Yeah. It'd be nice to see you when you're here. So, we had this incredible relationship, and I got engaged at a game park in South Africa. And he called to wish me and Shatra his best, and I even talked to him when he was in the hospital. But once he transitioned completely, this was before the pandemic. He slowed down a lot. Then his assistants did a lot of his work, but he still was engaged, and he still responded, and he never gave up. He never gave in. He never stopped fighting for justice. He never stopped fighting for truth.
One of the things that when you talk about the economic piece, that was something that, like I say, he was highly critical of the ANC after they took over. He said because Black South Africans needed an economic boost, and he felt that the corruption that was existing, that they were actually wasting what the people handed them by giving them power. And so he was not going to be shy about criticizing white leaders under apartheid or Black leaders in the ANC.
Correct. And I also want to go back to something that the good brother said before me, and he was so eloquent and elegant in what he said about Archbishop. But there was a misunderstanding, I think, about the whole thing with Miss Mandela, with Winnie. Let's keep in mind that Mr. Mandela divorced Winnie. We're not in their relationship. We don't know what happened, but he divorced Winnie. So don't think that there was not a backstory conversation going on about what people thought was the right way to approach justice. And there's different styles to do everything. You and I talk about the Martin Luther King style and the Malcolm X style all the time, and other styles of getting things done, the protest style from the partnership style. And I can see Archbishop Desmond Tutu saying, "I love you, Winnie, but this was wrong. I love you, Winnie, but we are winning the battles here, not winning the war. This is not the way. We don't do to others what they're doing to us." So I think that was a complicated set of relationships, and I think we should trust that Archbishop followed his heart, and as he always did, spoke truth to power, no matter what the repercussions, no matter what anybody thought about it. Even on this economic thing you're talking about, I mean, he wasn't talking about economics from the comforts of another country. He was talking about the economic condition and the economic exploitation from South Africa, where he lived. And this was well after the apartheid movement had ended, or transitioned, I'm sorry. And he could have just chilled, as we would say. He wouldn't have it. And man, wouldn't it be beautiful to have people like that in power today who spoke truth to power. President Bill Clinton once said, Roland, it's hard to get somebody to agree to the truth when the lie is paying their paycheck. And the lie never paid Archbishop Desmond Tutu a dime. He wouldn't let me pay him even for his expenses. He wanted to be independent of everything and do what was right in his own heart and his soul.
Archbishop Thabo Magoba talked to one of the local TV, on local outlets in South Africa, and he talked about the final moments with Bishop Desmond Tutu. Listen to this.
What is your last moments with him? Your last words? Your last moments, words that you shared, the conversation you had with him?
It was mainly the prayer, really. There's a powerful prayer in the Anglican rites when you pray with somebody who are dying on the point of death, and you just read these prayers, and they end up, even if it's tough, with the words Amen, Hallelujah. Basically, we're handing over everything to God, and it's not about him, it's not about me, but it's up to God.
That was the thing there, Dr. Julian Malvo. He was a strong person of faith.
Him, and I agree with Brother Bryant about his ability to speak to power, even when it was uncomfortable, even when he was speaking to other Black people about the abuses, frankly, that we saw with the ANC. And I'm not in it in terms of I don't live in South Africa. I've been there a couple times, but the fact is that there was an opportunity that might have been squandered in terms of some of the things that occurred. What I think mostly importantly about, well, first of all, I had the pleasure of meeting Archbishop Tutu a couple of times, and what I enjoyed about him was just his humor. I mean, he just was he enjoyed life. And that's something that I think that we in Black America, we always talk about what the challenges we face. Enslaved people found joy. And Archbishop Tutu found joy. I mean, even as he protested, he found joy. And that's something I think Betty Shabazz used to say, find the good and praise it. And that's very much what he did. So that's just something that has to make you smile when you see his little self behind the podium doing his thing. You're like, you just have to smile. But the other piece of it that I think is really important when John Bryant talks about the economic piece of it is that he got that and he tried to share that. And, you know, while Black South Africans had the political power, they did not have the economic power. And I think that's also the case in places like Atlanta and other places where Black people have seized political power but not economic power. It really gives us a lot to think about. But all I can say about Archbishop Tutu is just thinking about him makes me smile.
This is a photo from 2009. I had an opportunity to MC the Black Church Bowl at the inauguration of President Barack Obama in 2009. Bishop Tutu was one of the folks who was honored. This was one of the photos that I found with my brother, his wife, and there are others that I'm looking through all of my archives, because we were all backstage. And that was the thing on Makongo. He was indeed a small man, but his laugh was unmistakable. And that was one of the things that I enjoyed in terms of chatting with him.
Yeah, I mean, the sense of humor is legendary. You know, I can't think of anyone who I've spoken to who hasn't mentioned that before. And when you think about what he went through and what his people went through, and to have that as he aged gracefully, it's just really amazing. And it's really a lesson for all of us. One of the things that's also important to me, you know, fighting against apartheid was the first social justice campaign I can remember being involved in. My parents had me out there when I was like 7 years old with signs, you know, fighting for the end of that regime. And I have the image of him dancing in the streets when Mandela was released and the like. But I think it's also important to remember that he was an international icon, not only just because of what he did in South Africa, but the causes that he championed across the globe. He was very pro-Palestinian, which, you know, got the ire of many from the Israeli government who didn't like some of his stances there. He was also a big advocate for the LGBTQ plus community. He said, if gay people aren't allowed in heaven, that's not a place I want to go to. I'd rather go to the other place, right? And he was also a big advocate for climate change as well. And he wanted to make sure that some of the, you know, the pipeline that we're having here from the U.S. to Canada wasn't going to happen because he saw how that would affect indigenous rights. So he is somebody who realized, as Dr. King said, that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And he fought for that. And that's why there are so many people who are not engaged in the South Africa movement for freedom who know who this man is because of the stances that he took in support of them as well. Black Lives Matter. The list goes on and on. Whatever there was an injustice, he was right there fighting for it. And we should all be mindful of that and really carry on that legacy as well.
John, I first met him years ago when he was honored at the Trumpet Awards in Atlanta. And I remember first it was a long night. I swear the taping took forever. And one of the things that Tutu said there was he thanked Black America. And what he said to every African American who was sitting in that room, he said, y'all need to understand. He said, when we were children, we would be in the trees and playing. And he said he remembered an image of a torn ebony magazine that was on the ground. And he said it was that image, seeing how African Americans were living, that inspired and gave them hope there in South Africa.
Correct. And as usual, Roland, you are ahead of your time in the way you're framing and seeing things. By the way, I want to give respect to Dr. Malveaux, one of our few Black economists in this country who does an extraordinary job. I don't want to waste time reading the quote. I guess you can find it online if you're looking for it. But when he was 84 years old, Roland, to this point, after we had talked about dignity and how important that was in the world, it was pretty non-controversial to talk about dignity. I mean, it translates in every country in the world. And we start talking about this more difficult issue of capitalism, which, and money, which is religion. People confuse in our church, in the Black church, people would say, oh, the money's evil. And then he would correct and say, no, the love of money is evil, Desmond Tutu would say, Archbishop. And he wanted to bring this conversation that he thought had succeeded in pivoting Blacks in America into the next battle for freedom, the economic battle. I call it civil rights. He wanted to bring that conversation to South Africa. And so I wrote a book that needed credibility. It's called The Memo. And I went to Archbishop and I said, I know this is not your topic. And you may actually think you want to end our friendship now, because I'm talking about capitalism, free enterprise, economics, and ownership and opportunities, a mechanism honorably to set us free. And he said, no, you misunderstand me, my son. And I'm going to see if I can just read one line from his quote. He said, we regrettably live in a system of haves and have-nots. And then he goes on, our creators intended each of us to share in the earth's bounty. None of us should be without the means to achieve prosperity and wellness. And he goes on. But then, so I asked him to just confirm, because this came from his secretary, Roland, just confirm that this is what you want me to say. He said more than this. And he wrote this back.
Thanks. Go with it. God bless you.
Arch. Now this is Arch. This is May. Can you see that? May 2017. Am I doing that right?
Yeah.
May 2017. So that makes him, 86 when he did that?
Yep.
Still, I mean, just banging on the walls of justice, banging on the door saying, let my people in. He's like, fine, that was great. We finished with apartheid. Great. The new problem in South Africa and Africa is poverty. Let's now deal with that. And he wanted to be an instigator for good. And that's why he gave me that quote. And that's why he pushed that and other things we were doing there. And not just me, a lot of other people. But yeah, he's ahead of his time.
Truly an extraordinary figure. I'm going to close out our segment on Bishop Desmond Tutu before we go to break. This was the number of videos with him with the Dalai Lama. And first of all, I mean, if you want to see the two individuals loving on each other, laughing at each other. But to John's point, to Julian's point, here is Archbishop Desmond Tutu talk with the Dalai Lama about joy.
So now here, you, Tutu, my friend. You see, you have, I think, great potential. Great potential, yes. I mean, great potential is to create more happier humanity. Oh.
Yes. Mm.
So even you see, just look, you see your face. I think many people, you're always laughing, always joyful. That itself, very positive message.
Mm.
So sometimes, if may I say so, you see, political leaders or spiritual leaders, very serious face. Then, as soon as saw you see that serious face, we feel little sort of,
Hesitant.
hesitant. Oh, so see your face itself. You see something.
It's a big nose.
and you sometimes you see your eyes. Oh, look, oh, big round. Oh, then sometimes scares me.
Yes.
So I really appreciate
Yes.
you come and join our sort of the work.
He said something, John, in that interview that I thought was interesting. Again, it's an amazing interview. And he said, Dalai Lama said, the interviewer asked him a question about both of them thinking about death. And the Dalai Lama said, I would hope that the last image I would have before I leave would be his face and that smile.
Yeah, and by the way, Roland, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Now, I know you're wrapping up. I found him dancing. Do you have time for this?
Yeah.
I don't know if
Or do this. Yeah, or text me the link. I was looking forward to while you were talking.
yeah, I'll just text it to you. You can put it on your show later or whatever.
Got it.
If it is inspiring. You guys inspiring us even in physical death. He's been promoted. He's chilling in heaven, and we still dealing with taxes and politics.
Well, Bishop Desmond Tutu was indeed an amazing man. We want to pay tribute to him for an extraordinary life, passed away at the age of 90 years old. John Hope Brown, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. This was the White House interview that Bishop Desmond Tutu did after he received the 2009 Presidential Medal of Freedom. And I think this is a good way for us to close out the show. Folks, thanks a bunch. And again, prayers go out to his family. A week of mourning in South Africa for Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who passed away yesterday at the age of 90.
Being a catalyst, being there with other people, changing a situation of injustice to its opposite, changing oppression, and hoping you can usher in freedom and democracy. But the most important part of it is remembering that you are just one part. You may be a part that inspires others, but you know that it is because you're part of a team. Any instance of people not being given the opportunity of realizing their full potential is one that riles me. I don't know whether you know the prophet Jeremiah at one point has said to God, I don't want to be a prophet, and God persuades him and he becomes a prophet. And get quite annoyed with God because he has constantly got to be condemning people he loves. And he says, but if I keep quiet, your word is like a fire in my breast. And one does have that same kind of thing where you really do wish you could keep quiet. And there is something that says, if you keep quiet, you know you're being untrue to yourself, untrue to your calling, and that you will end up with a deep sense of maybe even disgust at yourself, but certainly dissatisfaction. The thing that I know about myself is that I do like the limelight. I do love to be loved. I mean, nothing riles me more than to be unpopular. Now, in a way, that can get into the way of your doing things when it's not clear whether you are saying or doing something so that the spotlight turns on you, or you are saying it really because you want to change the circumstance. In the Bible, there's a piece where the Apostle Paul says he's got a thorn in the flesh and has asked God, please remove it. And several times God has said no, and God says, my strength, that is God's strength, is made perfect in your weakness. And I think the weakness is that thorn in the flesh that keeps reminding you, don't be too hoity-toity.